Oh, what?
What's our direction, Chloe?
Negative.
Negative. Thank you. A negative association. So what about outliers?
There are potentially some.
Possibly. Did I spell that right? It doesn't look right. It looks too short. Possibly. There's some that don't fit our form. What's our form, Tanner? Yes, that's our graph. Is it linear, curved, or cluster? Curved. And then, let's see, who haven't I picked on? Joanna, what would you say about strength?
It seems to be pretty strong.
Pretty strong. All right, so today we're going to focus on the S part, and we're going to learn how to find an actual value to help us know whether it's strong, weak, moderate. So that's going to be the focus of today. I told you guys to bring your Chromebooks today because we were going to use Google Sheets. I got a whole strip of plugs. Or you can go over there. Or there's right there. So, if you have your Chromebook, get it out, please. Or I said you could bring your graphing calculator.
Can you show me how to use it?
Yeah.
What type of dog is that? Do you know where to get the... Will it read? Sure, it will read there. Sorry. There you go. The 2 inches that you need. It is. All right. Nate, do you have your Chromebook?
Yes,
Get it out, please, sir. All right. Before we get into the Google Sheets part, we're going to fill in our blanks here. So to evaluate strength, we look at the correlation coefficient, and we use the letter R. Correlation measures strength, but it also measures direction, because the two descriptors we use for direction are positive and negative. And so if you have a positive R value, you have a positive association. If you have a negative R value, you have a negative association. Now, R only measures linear relationships. So if we tried to, we could find a value for R for a curved scatter plot like this, but it R tells us how well our scatter plot fits a line, not a curve. So it wouldn't do us any good to find R for a curved scatter plot. And then just as a reminder, we have to be working with two quantitative variables. So we're going to keep working with our GPA ACT data.
Did it die?
Tanner, may Nate borrow your charger, please?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. All right. So now we're going to go to Google Sheets. You just want a blank one. Oh, forget this part. I gotta hit the button. It's like, why can't you guys see it? I zoomed in. Hopefully you can see it well enough. So we're going to find our value. You don't need to put the labels, but I'm going to. So we have GPA, and then we have ACT scores. Oh, wrong page. So GPA, we have 3.0, 3.5, 3.1, 4.0, 3.7, and 3.1. And then ACT scores, 19, 27, 22, 31, 26, and 19.
Oh, I have a graphing calculator, so I can use that. How do I do that?
And then once you have the data, are we all good for me to do the next step? You can't type fast? Okay. Yeah.
How do I use that graphing calculator?
You're going to hit on staff. Like Dr. Staff.
I'm just looking for it. Okay, there's that.
And then, oh no, sorry, site staff. Are you ready, Chloe? All right, so just like when we wanted to put a graph in, we're going to highlight our data. And then we're going to go to Insert. You're going to choose Function. And then you should get this other pop-out menu, and you're going to go to Statistical. And then you're going to go to Core L. And I just love that confidence.norm they type out, but correlation is too long to type out. So we're going to pick Core L. Now, if you want, you can click on the question mark and it'll tell you. The weird thing about correlation using Google Sheets is you have to put your Y data first. So our Y values are the ACT scores. So our Y value goes from B2, cell B2. So I put B with a 2 after it, and then I put a colon to B7, and it highlights all my Y data. And then I'm going to put a comma and a space. And then I have to put in my X data, which is the GPAs, so from A2 to A7. I don't know why Y has to come first, but that's the way Google Sheets is written. And then notice it does put in a little like thought bubble above it, but if I hit enter, it'll actually put the correlation value into the cell form. Alright, I haven't done this on here for a while, so I have to remember. It's done. So we're going out. You're going to do number 8. List 1, list 2, so go down and highlight ugly. Right, your diagnostics was none, so go ahead and stop. Grade half. Number 8. And then calculate.
Thank you so
Now,
much.
our value, but that's not the correct value. Anybody need any questions?
Have you seen the new Apple car?
What?
Have you seen the new Apple car?
No. Does it look like an apple?
Not really.
You're like the little one.
All right. So I'm gonna go back to the notes.
They used to be.
So our R value, go to 3 decimals, please, and make sure you do round accordingly. So ours would be 0.955. And then we're going to interpret the value of R in context. Now, I do it the same way every time, except for my R value and my context change. And then obviously if the strength, the words that I use for strength, and whether it's positive or negative change. But it's kind of like a sentence frame. And you guys can use it or not. I do suck at English, so if you have a better way of saying it, use it. So the way I would say it is in R value of, and then I give my R value, 0.955, 0.2, and then I would talk about whether it's strong or weak or moderate. In this case, it's relatively strong, fairly strong. You could even just say strong. We'll talk in a little bit about what our values are, moderate and weak and that kind of stuff. Because my R is positive, I know it's a positive linear because R only measures linear relationships. So I'm going to say it's relatively strong positive linear association. And then I throw the context in between GPA and ACT scores. It's like my sorry. Any questions before I flip? All right, so this time we're going to remind ourselves how to make a graph in Google Sheets, then find the R value and interpret in context. So I'm going to switch back over to the computer. I'm just going to highlight all of this and hit delete so I can start fresh. So this time we're looking at points. Oops, I didn't want to capitalize that. Per game. And then number of wins. And I'm just going to put it in there. So we had 34.8, 36.8, 25.7. Yes. Good typing, Chloe. Come
Why
on.
did we do the last one? We deleted everything?
Yeah. I was showing you how to find R. Now I'm reminding you how to make a graph and find R.
Did you watch our game on Friday?
Of course not. I saw you won, though.
Oh, you didn't teach it.
I mean, Sophie, what is
Yeah, come on.
yeah, 48 to 17.
I have to say the guys that I had in class before they left, they were not very confident that they were going to win.
Well, who? Wait, what?
Eric Sanders.
Oh my!
He was like
Did you have Eric? What block do you have Eric?
I don't know, first or second.
Oh
They
my
did
He
God.
was
second
at second
period.
wall.
Oh
Because he leaves Miss Berry's class and comes here. And I leave.
Okay.
well, we thought they were a lot better, but they actually really so bad. Most of their team are sophomores, and they have like 2 D1 guys.
So the guy who was with us,
That's the
I
correct
don't know if he was in
list.
here. Yes.
So then you're gonna
He was
put
like,
out of
"Jeez,
there,
he's north of Kentucky."
and then you're gonna
Definitely.
He was like, "We are in Eugene."
Oh,
and it should pick a decent.
And then he literally listed all the names. And at the very end, he was like, "And give me." But he already said, "Give me."
Katie got a personal foul in the bench.
Alright,
He hit some guy in the
everybody ready for me to remind you how to put your graph in?
face. He did a function.
Go to insert, and this time I'm going to include the labels because then it'll put them on my graph for me.
Oh,
So go to insert, chart. So a few above function. Mine automatically chose scatter chart, is what they call it. Let's see. Notice that here it goes 0, 5, 10, 15 on my Y. On my X, it doesn't have a label down here in the corner, but it goes 20, 25, 30, so I'm assuming that's 15. So we need to fix our X axis. So remember you would do that in customize. And we're going to go to the horizontal axes. And we want to set the minimum value at 0. And then what was our highest? 36.8. So we're going to go to 40. And then, I suppose I could leave it at going by 10s, but I want it to go by 5s.
is this horizontal?
Yes. So then under grid lines and ticks, if I choose, make sure you're on horizontal axes here. And then your major step, you can choose 5 and it'll go by 5s on the x-axis for you. And then if I close out of that menu, I can see my beautiful graph. Remember, that's how I make a graph.
It doesn't
Do
go
you
by
have-
fives on the bottom.
What? Sorry, Tanner.
It doesn't go by 5s on the bottom.
Okay, so go to customize,
Yeah.
go to grid lines and ticks, and then you're going to choose horizontal axis, and then your major step is going to be 5.
Do you mind reading it out for? Yes. People do that.
Matrix test is fine.
Do you want a copy of it?
Actually, wait. I have a copy.
So we have a
Who am I
lot
kidding?
would be.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Silly. Silly Sophie. That's my Sophie. What are we gonna do about her? Which one are you on? I'm on Kentucky, so number 5. 13, 2, and 7.
Okay.
Okay, then that's you. 5, 13, 2, 7, 11.
I don't know.
Okay, 7,
Okay,
11.
number,
And
I'm
then
not
6,
gonna
7,
listen to
11,
it.
5, 6.
It's that, or no, excuse me, it's second by equals. You're gonna hit enter to go into your first plot. You're gonna hit enter again to turn it on. And then you're gonna scroll down to type. You want the first one highlighted, which is,
I think that last one
and
is
those
very
are the correct places to do that.
Mark this in the link now.
So hit second mode to put out,
I think they're fuzzy
and then you're
Because I
gonna
went
zoom.
to the gym to Walmart, and I got back to my house,
And
and
you're
I only
gonna
had
choose
one.
number 9.
I was lying by the pool,
And then open
I reached
the
my
door.
pocket, and there's only one. So it could be Chloe.
Alright. So, those of you that are good with the graph, I want you to find the R value for this data and then interpret it into context. So those were the next 2 things on our notes. Find the R value, interpret in context for me, please. What do you mean, Chloe?
And your R value. How did we do it on the previous
I
one?
tried to do that, and Chloe said not to.
Don't include the labels. I think the labels might make things.
Statistics.
Here's where we have different ones.
But I can't find. Can I not just do A1 to B13? Do I have to do B2?
I mean, you can try. I don't think it'll work. It says that it has to have your Y data and then your X data.
This little.
Yes.
Tell me why this says ACT.
That is a good question.
I got it. 20.
Point.
No, it's not. Yes, I'm quite positive on this. I've done this. You're right. I'm sorry, Tanner.
Is it actually
Why don't you take over for me?
fine?
What's your favorite? Like in science, what's your favorite?
Chi
I asked you
squared.
this last week. Yeah.
Chi squared,
Like,
but we won't get to it.
oh no. They taught us about chi-squared and
Right.
bio. Chi-squared is fun.
Chi squared is fun.
But I feel like it'd get way cooler outside of the limits of biology.
Yep. There's like 4 chi squared tests we learned.
Oh.
We have
That's
them.
a lot.
Yeah.
It's like 4. Why do you need 4?
Because depending on the data.
Oh.
And when you get to, I can't remember, because I didn't do chi squared last year either. Or the year before. Oh my gosh. It's been so long since I got to do chi squared. Because last year they cut it out, the AP exam, because of COVID.
Yeah.
And then the year before I had Henry and I was on maternity leave. I
Oh.
haven't taught it in 3 years. No wonder I can't remember the names. I can't remember the name. That's not a good thing. There's one of them where you have to use matrices, so then you get to talk about matrices, which is so much fun. Yeah.
love
so
matrices.
confused.
It's literally not that confusing.
Matrices? I was gonna say, how do you know?
And I'm going to track today.
I will be attending chat today.
Really?
Yeah.
We have a meet on Wednesday.
I think I'm just gonna show up for today and then never show up. Well, it depends. If I'm not very fast, so that, you know.
You should do it now this year. There's already a meet happening. Yeah, we have a meet so fast. Yeah, cause like our practice ended and you guys were coming back from a game and like we talked to you guys outside, but I think you guys lost that game. I
Probably,
track.
most
How?
likely.
There was one time I went to track before. It was late at night. It was like probably almost 9 o'clock. Was it Thursday or Tuesday? I don't know. We lost on Thursday. We won on Tuesday.
You guys
So
went
it's
popular.
probably the one you lost. I know. It's sad. It's really sad.
Why are you guys so bad?
Well, so our starting goalie got hurt, and then Dakota broke. Who's your starting goalie? Caitlin Balsinger. She's a strong. That's all she told us. So yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, Tammy quit. Dakota broke her foot.
Goalie got
Yeah, our goalie got hurt, and we just feel really young. Like our entire back line was like freshmen
like
summer.
happy mode.
Nagino was one of our wins, but like Brooke Richardson, right? Martha Campbell. They played in our back line, like they're good and they're athletic and stuff. But it's like these sophomores should not start on varsity. I used to play with them. Yeah, I love them. They're so sweet. They're gonna be good in like a year or two. Yeah. They suck at basketball though. Oh. I'll say that because they're my teammates. Right. Is Brooke good? She tried scoring. It was a South game and she tried scoring in Derby.
Gross.
Richardson.
Oh.
She's really good. I like her. But
Girl.
it's just like some things just don't click in her head.
Did he always text you like the group chat about how like he's sending flowers? Like no one will be talking, he'll just send a picture of him bringing her flowers.
It's funny. But they're our freshmen. That's what we call them. Our freshmen.
Is she 15?
She turned 16 in March.
Everyone was making fun of him. Yeah, he's like.
We will get in trouble.
So, since you missed it. Yeah.
He's like, yeah, we're pretty much. Sorry, that's gross. Alright.
Yeah, but it's up. Point
Okay.
two.
I don't know.
Point
Okay.
two.
I know it's strong enough.
Okay, but is it still 0.8?
No. I wrote kind of strong, but how do you know?
Alright, so you should have gotten our value of 0.936, which points to kind of strong positive linear association between points per team and wins. Points per game and wins. That's okay. And now, Isla was asking me, how do I know if it's strong or not? Now we're going to talk about the values and what they really mean. Thanks, Chloe. So first of all, like I already said, a positive R means you have a positive association. A negative R means you have a negative association. R lives between -1 and +1. There will be questions in your homework tonight about what's wrong with this correlation statement. If they say the correlation is 1.3, that's what's wrong with it. You can't have a correlation greater than 1 or less than -1. It has to be between those numbers. So if you get r equals 0, that means there's no linear relationship at all. If you get r is 0.3, that's pretty weak. You could just say weak. You don't have to say pretty weak. It's a weak. It's positive because our r is positive, and I'm going to use plus. So weak positive linear relationship, because remember r only measures linear relationships. And then if it's negative 0.3, which is kind of hard to see that negative there, the only thing that changes is that it's a negative. So it'd be weak negative linear relationship. If you're around 0.7 or negative 0.7, I didn't do plus or minus here, that you would say is moderate. It's not really strong, it's not weak, so we just say moderate. And in this case, the R value I gave is positive, so moderate positive linear relationship. And then if you get 1 or negative 1, that's as strong as it can get. So my word to show that it's really strong is very. I told you I'm not good with English. So here I would say very strong. And in fact, if it was like 0.98 or 0.99, I'd probably still say very strong. So very strong positive linear relationship. And then if it's -1, that's still very strong. Don't let the negative make you think that it's weak. It's the closer you get to 1 or -1 that is the strength. So it's still very strong. The only difference is that it's a negative linear association. Sorry, relationship or association. Aren't they, what's the word? You know, when you look up the word in a thesaurus? Something like that. Aren't they like that? Like one replaces the other, relationship association. So why are you picking on me, Tanner? Gosh. You're just like, oh, I gotta pick on my teacher. I haven't done it in 5 minutes. What was it? Huh? Can I flip? Alright, so like I said, in your homework there's a question, I think it gives you like 3 statements, and it says, what's wrong with these statements? If the R value is outside the -1 to +1 value, that's what's wrong with it. And here's some other weird facts about R. So correlation makes no distinction between explanatory and response variables. They must be quantitative. So look out for statements where they try to talk about correlation with a categorical variable such as gender. They'll say something like the correlation between gender and number of speeding tickets is blah blah blah. You can't make a correlation with a categorical variable such as gender. Units for correlation are none. That's another way they try to mess with people. They'll say the correlation is 0.75 meters per second. Well, the fact that they threw meters per second on there means they have no clue what they're talking about with correlation because there are no labels for R. The correlation value does not change if the units for either variable are changed. So let's say you're looking at the correlation between height and weight, and you measured height in inches because we're in the US, and then somebody said, oh, you should put it in the metric system, so you changed all the heights to centimeters. Your R value will stay the same. Doesn't matter if you convert from inches to centimeters, centimeters to inches, the R value is going to stay the same. The correlation value R describes the strength of linear relationships only. However, just because you get an R value of -1 or +1 does not imply a linear relationship. You need to look at the graph also. Like I said, with a curved scatter plot, you can run a correlation and get an R value, and you could get 1 or -1, but until you look at the graph and go, oh yeah, it's curved, you're not going to realize that it's not giving you a good value for your correlation. The correlation value R is non-resistant. That's back from Unit 1 also, which means that it's vulnerable. Oops, I forgot my I. Sorry. Vulnerable to outliers. So outliers are really going to mess with our R value. And we'll talk about that later in this unit, and we'll really mess with them for outliers in the X direction and there and outliers in the Y direction. Correlation does not imply causation. So just because two variables are associated does not mean one causes the other. And correlation is not a complete summary of two variable data. So, oops, there we go. Down below, can I move it up? Sorry, I should check before I just do it. So here is the scatter plot of the football data you guys put into Google Sheets and made your scatter plot. Okay. I was apparently tired when I typed this up because I already had you interpret the value of R in context, so we're not doing that again. What I want to talk about is the highlighted point. So it says in red because when I actually made this, it was in red, and then I printed it and it didn't show up red. So the highlighted point is this bottom one here. You can see it's kind of got the poof around it, but it's that guy down there. And that represents Mississippi. Well, Mississippi is the team that scored about 16.1 points per game, but only won 2 games. So what do you guys think is going to happen if we get rid of Mississippi? Is our correlation, which by the way, remember is 0.936, is it going to get closer to 1 or is it going to go further away from 1? You're just nodding. What does that mean? Which of the two choices? Closer to 1? Tanner says closer to 1. You guys are nodding. Okay. We're going to go back to our Google Sheet. And we're going to get rid of Mississippi. I'm going to zoom out a little. Alright, so Mississippi was this one right here. So I highlighted that row. And I'm going to go into Edit, and you can choose Delete Row. And then it just bumps everything up for me. And then I'm going to highlight my data without Mississippi now. I'm going to say that again. So I highlighted it. And then I went to Edit, and you choose Delete Row. So when I highlight my data, then I go Insert, Function, Statistical, where is it? Correlation. We're going from B2, oh man, there we go, B2 to B12, and then A2 to A12. And I get 0.919 if I round. So Mississippi actually helps us have a stronger linear relationship. Are you guys okay if I switch back to my doc cam? So, Mississippi, which is this point here, I have Mississippi in my data. You can see I can put a line on there, right? But the minute I get rid of Mississippi, I almost have a curve to my data. So by getting rid of Mississippi, my correlation went down, not much, but it went down, so it got less strong. So Mississippi was keeping us closer to 1. So R, and that's without Mississippi, became 0.919. So Mississippi kept us closer to 1. Mississippi. M-I-S-S-I-S-S. Kept R closer to 1. That was a weird one, sorry. Got like a little flip to it. Questions? Any questions? Great.
Do we have it?
You do have an exit task. We're back in person. I get to have those again. So you're gonna describe the association, which means you're gonna use DOFs. I put it in my little hint there. Look at the graph to make sure it actually is linear. Don't just find R and assume it's linear. So put your data in, look at a graph, find R, use DOFs to describe.